Hey artists, thanks for joining me in the art room again. Okay, welcome back to our mini still life draw along. Remember, in these series of video guides, we are tackling still life, but in condensed format for this year because, hey, we're making do with what we can all. And I'm just so glad I get to do some drawing with you today. All right, so next object we're gonna tackle in our still life, right? We already tackled the hardest one, that reflective glass bottle. Oh, boy howdy. Oh my goodness. That was tremendous. That was a lot, right? And so we moved on down to this croissant, much simpler object, right? It's not see-through, it's not reflective. So really just focusing on looking for those good form shadows, light source, right? And getting a sense of that texture of the bread. Now we're moving on to, I don't know, kind of somewhere in between, right? It's a really simple object, not a wide variety of shadows, but it's smooth, it's semi-reflective, it's gonna have some highlights in it. So we're gonna put some good time and really good controlled pencil pressure work into this bowl because we want it to have, unlike the croissant, which can have all sorts of textury pencil strokes because we want it to feel like bread. In this bowl, what's going to be tricky is not the shadows themselves, but controlling that pencil to get it as smooth and buttery as possible. Okay, let's gather our supplies. This object, as we look at the total value of it, is pretty darn light. Right? If we look here in the image, we still have our darkest values in our cast shadows, right? And some of the folds of the fabric. The bowl is definitely in a middle zone, right? It's clearly a darker value by the shadow than the croissant at the top. So we'll be sticking probably with like a middle 3-4 pressure, except for, ooh, some really nice areas where it catches some light. And this like, 5 pressure we'll use just on the rim of the bowl to get that color detail in black and white. Okay, so we're going to be working with that. You will need, and as always, right, you can't see my reference because it's off to the side because I want to have all my beautiful drawing work on the screen for you. All right, so let's gather our supplies. Make sure you've got a number 2 pencil, shade guard, because we've done some gorgeous shading. We don't want to smudge our work. Remember, your hand that you shade with, your dominant hand, so I'm right-handed, right hand, is going to sit on this shade guard so you're not smearing it across your drawing. You're going to need your kneaded eraser, regular eraser, pencil sharpener, blending stump. We might, depending on how dark we want to bring this rim detail, we might need the ebony pencil. Probably not, but we'll see. Okay, that's kind of up in the air. We'll see how it goes. All right, so in the meantime, I'm going to get ready and get started with some shading. Grab my shading guard and bring it on over here. Okay, so as I look at the overall value of the bowl, I can see, okay, even though I've got heavy upper left-ish light source happening here by these highlights, right, in the direction of the shadows. I also have some studio lights coming from the upper right. So we have an interesting thing happening here where I have darker value, right, bright highlight, darker value sweeping, and then we pick up a little bit of light over here on the right-hand side as well. So I can see some of my darkest form shadows are happening underside, lower left, upper left, and then it lightens up again a bit over here. So I'm going to start with like, a 3 pencil pressure because this is still a fairly light object. And I'm going to tip my pencil point to the side, right? Don't work point up and down like this. I'm going to tip my pencil point to the side. I'm going to start building up at like a 3 pressure, right? So if 5 is the heaviest we can press on our pencil, I'm at like a 3. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm going to start building up some graphite. And I can see I've got a form shadow that sweeps under the edge of the bowl here and then comes up, grab my shade guard here, and then comes up the side of the bowl just on this very edge. And it stays wider down here. Again, I'm shading with the form of the object. Now this is where you want to keep your pencil pressure as even as possible. You want to avoid stripiness because that's going to be trickier to blend out. We want this bowl to look really beautiful and glassy smooth because it is ceramic, right? So we want to feel like the texture that it is. Now, as I come up the side where this croissant is, I still have a bit more value, but towards this section, I definitely have a lot of light happening. And so I have this light, the shadow kind of follows this light edge and then stops here and it stays light right around the rim of the bowl until it peters off, oh, just about mid-pair. It comes up about here and meets that colored lip, that orange stripe. Okay, and it's a little bit firmer at this edge. This is maybe more of a true, you know, 3 even to 4, maybe 3 even to 4. I'm just gonna start building up those values. And now, as I curve around and I move towards the right-hand side of that bowl, that value is gonna start to lighten up. All right, so as I sweep over this way, my value is not going to stay quite the same. Keep that pencil tip to the side, right? Try to avoid as much stripiness as you can, right? Because we'll be working back and forth with our kneaded eraser and our blending stump to blend that out. And then as we move in towards the right side of the bowl, I'm lightening up on my pencil pressure. I'm not, oh, there's some grit under the paper. Just a little extra spot there. And I'm lightening up, and now I'm moving towards maybe like a 2 to a 1, letting it just fade at this corner. But then an interesting thing happens because of the leaf that we have cut off of, or cropped off of our page, is actually casting a little bit of a shadow, which becomes a form shadow on this bowl. And I can see that this darker value continues up the underside. So now heavy, a little bit heavier on your pencil pressure. And then right up to about here, it's a little bit more back to that like 3, 4. But then down here, it's still very light. And this just kind of fades almost to like a 1. So now I'm like no pencil pressure. Okay, so kind of like darker, fading a bit to lighter. And darker under here. Let's do a little work with our blending stump now. Okay, so very gentle pressure on the blending stump. I'm not really pressing at all, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tilt my blending stump to the side, right? Don't work the point. Tilt the blending stump to the side. And now I'm just gonna start to gently move the graphite. And I'm smudging and I'm blending in the direction and with the shape of the form of the bowl. Right, so I'm not moving up and down. I'm really working with beautiful rounded shape of the bowl. Tilting that blending stump right to the side. Remember, it's always okay to pause the video, stop it where you need it. Now, very gentle pressure in my light area here. Just want to get a little more tone onto the bowl and soften the edge in which it meets. I'm just going to go back in with my kneaded eraser and pull a little bit more pencil out of there. Just a little bit, not a lot. A little subtractive drawing there. And now just use some of that built up graphite on my blending stump. Try to like work that edge in and get that as smooth as possible. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my blending stump here, except now I'm just going to draw with the blending stump. I'm just going to soften the edge of which that shadow happens. And where it's really bright, go back in with my vinyl eraser and just clean up that one little edge right there. It's nice and bright. Now, I actually do need to, looking at this bowl, I want to go in and darken the under edge where that happens. Where that happens. Goodness, you don't know what that means. Where this form shadow darkens on this under edge. So if I look at if I bring my bowl back over here, you can see there's a darker form shadow as it comes down to the foot of this bowl. And I want to richen that up a little bit. So I'm going to come back in with my pencil, firmer pressure, you know, going back to like that 4. I'm going to start to add just a little bit more value in on the under edge of the foot of that bowl, just richen that up a little bit. Right, it's not a lot, it's delicate, it's in stages. Let me see, just kind of bring that a bit more in and under and just let that fade off into the body of the bowl as well. And same thing, go back and, you know, reblend, really get it to meet in. And I think I want to take my kneaded eraser, actually bring it a little bit further across the edge of the bowl here. I'm just lightly petting the graphite because I just want to bring that a little bit lighter across and get that really nice smooth finish there. Okay, and then looking at the foot of the bowl, I can distinctly see that this lower left continues to be much darker, and then this right side continues to pick up a bit more light. So I'm going to stick with this darker value, kind of like that 4 pressure, over towards the left. As I come across, now I'm bringing it up to more like a 3 towards the middle. More like a 3, more like a 3. And then as I bring it over to the edge, I'm going to bring it more to like a 2. Around that edge, okay? And then right underneath where the foot is sitting on the tabletop, you can see it's not an outline, but I'm just gonna darken that edge. It's quite, I'm like at a 4 pressure there as well. I'm just darkening the edge where it sits. Okay, and then same thing, I'm gonna use my blending stump to go ahead and blend the foot of this bowl. Lovely. Excellent. Okay, and then, yeah, that looks pretty good. Now the only thing I want to do is with a firm, like 5 pressure, we'll again come back into these cast shadows with the ebony, just on the underside of this lighter edge of the bowl. I want to go ahead and give it like a 5 pressure where I see this bowl sitting. I just want to give it a little bit of a ground to sit on, just on this light edge. It feels firmly sat there, but just on this edge, a little bit of a firm pressure, because it's definitely darker value coming out from, oops, oh crumbs, from behind this edge of the bowl, and I overshaded there. Let's see if I can go back and adjust it. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Got a little zealous. There we go, that's better. Okay, and then I'm just gonna, again with the blending stump, give it a little smudge, and then it starts to feel well grounded. Again, don't worry so much about the background. When we come back in here with our fabric and cast shadows video guide, we'll take care of that. Right now, we're just still focused on those objects. Okay, one last little area we've got to tackle. Okay, now we've got a nice bowl form, is that rim, okay? And you can see the rim is like a nice little color detail that happens here, but it catches a lot of light at the top. So we're going to kind of treat it almost like a line, but like a really wide, thick line that fades dark to light as I observe what's happening there. Okay, so I'm going to take my shade guard again. Rest your hand on the shade guard. Don't try to do this without the shade guard. Pull my video a little closer to myself. And I can see where that colored lip curves away from us, I'm gonna be at like a 4 pressure. And I'm just gonna follow my little drawn edge that I had done, 4 pressure all the way around. I'm just gonna kind of define that edge to start with. And then what I'll do is I'll use my blending stump to create the shading on the top of that edge. Okay, so I've got that little edge detail. Now I'm going to take my blending stump, because I do want to add some tone to it. And I'm going to use the point of that blending stump now to just shade along the top of that line. Do you see how that adds the value into it? That adds kind of like a nice subtle, ooh, geez, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to knock the camera, 2, 3 value into it. So give it a little blend right along the edge. Wherever it looks like you need to add a little bit more pencil and fade it a bit more, go ahead, do that. And then just use your kneaded eraser. Wherever you see those bright light highlights, and go right back in, do a little subtractive drawing, and pop those highlights right in. You know what I'll actually do here is I think I need the big guns. I think I need my vinyl eraser. Just give me just a little fine edge there. Okay, and a little bit of one right back here, which makes sense because that's where it's kind of catching the most light, and just a little erase. Couple nice delicate highlights right there. If you really want them to stand out, you just take your blending stump, add a little bit more value just around the edge of them. And voila, we have a nice shiny bowl, and we are ready to shade some fruit. So join me in the next video when we're gonna tackle this pear, okay? So do a little pear drawing next, and then we'll follow that up with some grapes, all right? Oh, take care, everybody in the art room. Happy to draw with you today. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, bye-bye.